Hey guys, it's Justin, and today we're going to be talking about the Georgia real estate exam. Stay to the very end so you guys know all the tips and tricks to pass the first time. So let's get right into it. Just a little background is that I live in Georgia and I took the real estate license in Georgia and I failed the first time because I had no idea how the questions were going to be and what the questions were going to be like. You know, I took the pre-licensing course online and I passed that test, but then when I went into the state exam, the questions were totally different. And the way I studied and the way that the exam had written its questions were totally different. And so in today's video, I really just want to focus down on the topics and what you really should focus on practicing, because the moment I opened up the exam and I saw the first question on the computer, I had no idea what the answer was. So I'm going to give you guys my experience and what I had to deal with and what you guys can learn from this, and so you guys can pass the first time. So for you guys to understand how the exam is laid out, there are 152 questions on the exam. Technically, when you get into the exam room, they tell you 157, but there's 5 questions that don't go onto your exam score. I think that's just for them to sort of see what you know so they can put it onto future exams. But there's only 152 questions that are graded. 100 of them, which is national, which is basically everything that you need to know about real estate, right? And 52 questions are specifically only for Georgia. So usually when you get into the exam and you click through the questions, if it says in Georgia or in the state of Georgia or something that says Georgia, you're probably going to know that that's going to be a Georgia question. So make sure you guys look out for that. In order for you guys to pass, you need to get at least 109 questions. So when I took it the first time, I got 102 questions correct. And usually it depends on what questions it is, and so their grading is not 3, 3, 3. So they don't grade it by each question is specific points. They do it by difficulty. So there's some questions that might be worth 3 points, some questions that are worth 1 point. So I can't give you guys how much you really need to get correct, but you want to shoot for about 109 correct. Just a tip for you guys, when you guys do take your exam, there is on the bottom of your screen, of your computer screen, you'll see a tool called bookmark. A bookmark is basically, if you have no idea the question, you want to come back to it, you check it, and then your computer will tell you the ones you check will be red and the ones that you know that are for sure is green. So then you can come back to it. And what I did on the first time was I basically used that to see how many questions, I could get wrong. Right? And I think I had about 30 to 40 that I had no idea. And that's a lot for the exam. But mind you, I had no idea what I was studying and what I was getting myself into. But you want to sort of gauge how much you know and what you don't know on the exam. Now that we talked about the exam layout, let's talk about how the questions were formulated in the exam. So when the test was created, there were 3 criteria that the test makers wanted to make sure that you understood about the exam. The first one is if you can recall the information. Second is if you can apply the information. And third is if you can analyze the question. So here's what Georgia defines these 3 criteria. So for recall, they say the ability to recall or recognize specific information is required. For 2, application, they say the ability to comprehend, relate, or apply knowledge to new or changing situations is required. And for the third one, analysis, is the ability to analyze and synthesize information, determine solutions, and or to evaluate the usefulness of a solution is required. So these are the 3 things that you want to make sure you understand. That way when you go into the exam, you know exactly how the questions are going to be formulated. We're going to take about a couple of seconds. I'm going to have a blank screen and I'm going to give you guys examples of what the real estate exam questions will be like. That way you have an example of how they question it out. Stay tuned to the very end because I'm actually going to give you guys the information that you guys will need when you go into the exam. That way you know specifically what you're studying for and what you need to study for. Now that you guys saw the sample questions of the exam, hopefully you knew all the answers. Make sure you guys like this video as we continue on. Now let's talk about the specific part of the national portion of the exam. Now remember, this portion is 100 questions. So this is where majority of your questions are. And these are the basic laws and specific things that you need to know as a real estate agent. That way, when you go into the field, you know exactly what you're doing. So here are the main topics that you really need to dive down on when you take the exam. When you take the national portion of the exam, there are only 11 topics that they're going to test you on. But here's the catch. There are specific things that you must know. So you want to make sure you understand 100% of each topic. The first topic is property ownership. Number 2 is land use controls and regulations. 3 is valuation and market analysis. 4 is financing. 5 is general principles of agency. 6 is property disclosures. 7 is contracts. 8 is leasing and property management. 9 is transfer of title. And 10 is practice of real estate. And 11, and the last one, is real estate calculations. So you can see there's a variety of questions that the real estate exam will question you on. So you gotta make sure you know all these topics. And here are the specific main ones that you should be looking out for, because these are gonna be the most questions that are asked in this portion. The topic that you should focus mostly on is contracts, as there will be 17 questions on the exam out of 100. The second topic is general principles of agency. This topic will have 13 questions on the exam, so you want to make sure you know this one too. The next one is practice of real estate. There are going to be 13 questions out of 100 on the exam. Next one is real estate calculations. This one will have 10 questions, and I think this is the most complicated for those who don't know a lot about math. The last and final one that's a big portion of the exam is financing. Financing comes in at 10 questions out of 100. From those 5, those are half a portion of the whole exam. So these are where a majority of your questions are going to come from. Now that I gave you guys the sample questions and hopefully you guys knew the answer to all of it, let's go on to the Georgia specific part of the exam. Now remember, this is 52 questions, but in my opinion, this is where it gets the hardest, because when I took my exam, I missed a lot on the real estate portion of just Georgia, because out of 52, I had only gotten about 32 questions correct. So that's partially half of them. You want to make sure you really understand Georgia specific portion of the exam. So here are the 3 topics that is talked about in the exam for Georgia. 1, it's going to be state laws and rules. 2 is real estate practice in Georgia. And 3 is finance and closing. Now I know what you're thinking. It's only 3 topics, right? How hard can it be? Hold your horse, because remember, this is where I missed a lot of questions. So you want to make sure you know specifically everything about these 3 topics, because if you don't, and you go into the exam, you're going to waste your money, that $121 fee, and you're going to have to do it continuously. So I'm going to give you guys what the subcategories of each one is, that way you know specifically what you need to study for. Alright, so the first subtopic for state laws and rules is unfair practices, substantive regulations, qualifications and fee, fair housing laws, real estate education, research and recovery fund, investigation and hearing process, commission organization and procedures, and required licensure. So those are the subcategories for state law and rule. So you guys know there are 16 questions in this topic. Now let's go to the second one. For the second topic, which is real estate practice in Georgia, the subcategories are real estate practice, sales contracts, listings and agency, property management, and community association management. And in this second topic, there are going to be 21 questions out of 52. So this is going to be the biggest portion of the state portion of the exam. So make sure you understand all of those subcategories. Now let's go on to the third topic. The third topic, which was financing and closing, is going to have 2 subcategories, which is finance and closing procedures. Now, these are going to be 15 questions out of 52. That's not as much, but you've got to understand what goes into closing and specific financing rules about if it's a FHA loan versus a VA loan, or if somebody's putting down a 20% down for the loan. You got to make sure you understand all of it. All right, so the first tip that I'm going to give you guys is to take as many practice tests as you can. Literally, I only took the practice exam that my online pre-licensing course gave me, and the wording that was on there versus when I took the exam was totally different. So what I suggest is go to your nearest bookstore and buy a textbook of all the practice exams that they can give you. Know what the wordings is, because probably the people who have created the exam probably wrote the questions for the practice exams. The second tip that I'm going to give you guys is do not focus on the vocabulary. Yes, flashcards are important that you guys understand the vocabulary of these words, but you need to understand how they are applied in terms of real estate. Because when you go out as an agent and you go talk and somebody says VA loan and you don't understand the specific stuff that goes into a VA loan, you're going to fail your first year. So you've got to make sure you know and specifically understand the vocabulary in terms of context. The third and most important tip that I'm going to give you guys is review your pre-licensing course. Because why? I went in just doing like 10, 20 practice tests, and instead of knowing my topics, I think what I did was memorize the questions and how it looked. And so when I went into the state exam, when they gave me totally different wordings of a question, I had no clue what the answer was. So not only taking practice tests is important because that uses the structure of if you know everything, but it's good to go back to your pre-licensing course and review every single chapter. You don't have to read word for word, but probably if you took it online, they're gonna bold some stuff. Go through the bolded stuff, right? Go through what specifically they tell you that you need to know, because guess what? That's probably gonna be in the exam. All right, for those who sticked around, I'm gonna give you guys this bonus one, is to study the major topics that I just talked about. These are the topics that are on the exam. My pre-licensing course gave me 27 chapters that I needed to understand. If you look at the national portion and the state portions, there's only 14 topics. So you can see that 14 is not 27, so you only need to focus on these 14 topics. For the ones who've sticked around to this very end, I want you guys to go to the link in the description and click on that link. That link is gonna give you guys a handbook of specifically everything that's on the exam. Now, I don't know if I'm allowed to give you guys this, and I don't know if I do have permission, but if it's on there, click on that link, see everything, print it out and highlight things that are specifically on the exam. That way, when you go into your pre-licensing course, you can just get the topics and specific things that it talks about and just study those. All right, there you guys have it. Those are my experiences and tips that I wanted to give you guys because no one told me this when I was taking my Georgia real estate license. I wish I knew. That way I could have saved another $121 and I could have used that towards, some other things to invest in, but no one told me, and so I had to experience this by my own. So if you found this video helpful enough and you did pass your exam on the first try, congratulations. If you guys like this type of video, make sure you guys subscribe, like this video, that way I understand that you guys want more of these type of videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.